Dear friends, welcome to yet another installment of Strategic Power. In this video, we will address the reasons why the United States had the plan to leave Iraq, what happened on Sunday, and what possible developments may arise. On Sunday, January 28th, a drone strike hit a military base near the Syria-Jordan border, resulting in the death of 3 American soldiers. The White House attributed the attack to radical militant groups supported by Iran, and on the same night, the US President, Joe Biden, made a somber promise of a response. This escalation occurred just a few days after the announcement that the US was planning a complete withdrawal from the region, especially Iraq, where a contingent of American troops had been involved in low-intensity fighting against the Islamic State since 2014. Despite Iran's denial of its participation in the attacks, some American politicians are already calling for retaliation, leading Iran to raise the readiness level of its air defenses. Before we proceed, if you haven't yet, consider subscribing and activating the bell to receive notifications about our new videos. Let's now explain why US troops are currently positioned in Syria and Iraq. For context, there are about 900 troops in the Kurdish-controlled northeastern parts of Syria and approximately 2,500 in Iraq, mainly in and around Baghdad. The United States has always claimed that the troops, including those attacked on Sunday, although technically in Jordan, are in the region as part of the ongoing fight against the Islamic State, and that the contingent in Iraq is there at the invitation of the Iraqi government. However, this claim has always been hard to believe, especially since, well, the Islamic State no longer poses a significant threat. After taking control of about a third of Syria and 40% of Iraq in 2014, the Islamic State lost about 95% of its territory by 2018, confined mainly to remote desert areas in western Iraq. Although there is a risk that current regional instability could revive the Islamic State, as evidenced by the recent bomb attack in the Iranian city of Kerman, this does not make the US justification more plausible. After all, it is what they have claimed for the past 5 years. The US military presence in the region became especially controversial during Trump's presidency, especially after the former president declared at a press conference that the US was in Syria only for the oil. "We're keeping the oil. We have the oil. The oil is secure. We left troops only for oil." However, although this statement became a topic of discussion in Chinese and Russian media, it also does not offer a plausible explanation. Although the Trump administration authorized the American company Delta Crescent to resume oil production in the area, the terms of the agreement stipulated that over 90% of the revenue should return to Kurdish authorities. The Biden administration refused to renew the sanctions waiver for the company and prohibited US troops from supporting any private companies in the region. So if it's not about the Islamic State and it's not about oil, why does the US still maintain troops here? The consensus among well-informed analysts points to Iran. In essence, US troops in the region are there to contain Iran and disrupt its support for its proxies, especially the militias in Iraq. That is why they are scattered throughout Iraq and Syria, making it difficult to establish stable supply lines for Iran to its proxies. This also explains the constant skirmishes between Iran-backed groups and US troops in the region. However, since Israel's invasion of Gaza, the frequency and intensity of these skirmishes have increased significantly, with approximately 150 individual attacks just last week. Earlier this month, the Iraqi government requested the complete withdrawal of US troops from Iraq, and on Thursday, the US announced it had started negotiations for its withdrawal. At the same time, Foreign Policy reported that the US was considering the possibility of withdrawing from Syria, presumably in part because Baghdad continues to be the main base for US operations in Syria. However, following Sunday's events, a US withdrawal in the near future now seems very unlikely. In addition to the 3 dead American soldiers, at least 34 service members were injured in the attack on Tower 22, a military base in Jordan housing some 350 US Army and Air Force personnel. To put this in context, under the 2022 US-Jordan Strategic Partnership Memorandum of Understanding, the US is permitted to use Jordanian territory for military purposes in exchange for approximately $1.5 billion annually. Responsibility for the attack was claimed by an Iran-backed militia group called Islamic Resistance in Iraq, commonly known as IRI, which claimed the attack was retaliation for Biden's support for Israel. The IRI also claimed to have carried out a separate, simultaneous attack on US troops at the Ain al-Assad base in Syria, but it is unclear whether this attack was successful. The attack in Jordan represents the first lethal strike against US personnel since the start of the war between Israel and Hamas in October, marking a worrying escalation in a conflict that now involves at least 10 countries. As for what happens next, the US has already responded with airstrikes on IRI facilities in Iraq, and as mentioned earlier, President Biden has promised a response. Some US senators have also called for direct strikes on Iran, leading the country to raise its air defenses to the highest level of readiness. However, this does not necessarily indicate an imminent World War III, especially since Iran has distanced itself from the attacks. Iran's official news agency cited Iran's permanent mission to the UN, stating that Iran is not connected to the attacks and that the clashes are between the US military and regional resistance groups in mutual conflict. While this claim should be viewed with caution, it is notable that the IRI is considered one of Iran's more independent proxies, suggesting the possibility they conducted the attacks on their own. Similarly, the US has emphasized it does not seek a regional war with Iran, with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs stating to ABC News that US actions in the region are meant to be deterrent, avoiding further escalation. However, this serves as yet another reminder that even as the US and other major players in the region intentionally avoid regional conflicts, unplanned escalation is often difficult to avoid. In recent months, things have steadily moved in one direction, despite US efforts, and it seems inevitable that some form of American de-escalation will be necessary. The situation becomes even more delicate due to the fact that Israel's attack on Gaza shows no signs of abating. Israeli officials recently admitted they are far from defeating Hamas, and there is ongoing speculation about a possible Israeli invasion of southern Lebanon. We appreciate you following our analysis on this topic. Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to receive more content related to this subject. Also explore our other videos addressing the events influencing our history. Until the next video.